the Holocaust of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The atomic destruction that changed the world. The sky turned to fire. Imagine a bright summer morning, children laughing, markets bustling, workers heading to their jobs, and families preparing for another ordinary day. Then, in an instant, the sky erupts into blinding light, followed by an inferno that devours everything in its path. The world had never seen such destruction before, and it changed history forever. This was not a natural disaster, nor was it a mere battle in the ongoing war. This was the nuclear holocaust of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, an event so devastating that its echoes still haunt humanity today. The atomic bombs dropped on these two cities became the most harrowing symbols of modern warfare. They marked the end of a war, but also the beginning of an entirely new kind of global threat, the terrifying potential of nuclear weapons. These bombings left scars not just on the land and its people, but on the collective consciousness of the world, a permanent reminder of the consequences of unchecked human power. The path to destruction. By the summer of 1945, World War II was in its final stages. The Axis powers had crumbled one by one, with Nazi Germany surrendering in May. However, Japan, resilient and unwavering, continued to fight. The United States, weary of prolonged warfare and the staggering loss of life, sought a decisive and swift end to the conflict. In a highly secretive project known as the Manhattan Project, scientists had developed the most powerful weapon the world had ever seen, the atomic bomb. The Manhattan Project, led by renowned scientists such as J. Robert Oppenheimer, Enrico Fermi, and Niels Bohr, involved thousands of researchers working tirelessly across secret facilities in the United States. Years of theoretical and experimental physics had culminated in a weapon that could unleash an unimaginable amount of energy. The decision to use the bomb, heavily debated among military and political leaders, was ultimately made by President Harry S. Truman. He believed it would end the war swiftly and save countless lives, especially those of American soldiers who would have to invade the Japanese mainland. However, this decision came at a moral cost that the world would grapple with for generations. Hiroshima, August 6, 1945. At precisely 8:15 a.m. on August 6, 1945, the B-29 bomber Enola Gay soared over Hiroshima, a city of approximately 350,000 people. The bomb, known as Little Boy, was released from an altitude of 31,000 feet. Moments later, a blinding flash illuminated the sky, followed by an explosion equivalent to 15,000 tons of TNT. The temperature at the hypocenter reached a staggering 7,000 degrees Fahrenheit, vaporizing everything within a 1-mile radius. The impact was catastrophic. Buildings crumbled, bodies disintegrated, and a firestorm engulfed the city. An estimated 80,000 people perished instantly, while tens of thousands suffered horrifying burns and radiation poisoning. Survivors, known as hibakusha, wandered the ruins, skin peeling, eyes scorched, and voices hoarse from screaming. Hiroshima had become a graveyard in an instant. The blast's effects spread far beyond immediate physical destruction. The infrastructure of the city was obliterated. Roads became impassable, hospitals and schools lay in ruins, and the once bustling streets were now desolate, filled with the charred remains of homes and buildings. Water sources were contaminated, and the survivors, with limited resources, had to navigate the city as it was being consumed by fires that raged uncontrollably. The air was thick with smoke and dust, and a choking stench of death lingered in the atmosphere. Many who initially survived the blast later succumbed to radiation sickness, a mysterious and lethal condition that caused hair loss, vomiting, internal bleeding, and in many cases, a slow and agonizing death. The lingering effects of radiation would continue to claim lives for years, even decades, after the bombs fell. Nagasaki, August 9, 1945. Just 3 days later, another B-29 bomber, Boxcar, carried a second atomic bomb, Fat Man, originally intended for Kokura. Due to poor visibility over the Kokura arsenal, the target was changed to Nagasaki, an industrial city with a population of about 263,000. At 11:02 a.m., Fat Man exploded over the city with a force of 21,000 tons of TNT. Unlike Hiroshima, Nagasaki's terrain, surrounded by hills and mountains, partially shielded it from total annihilation. However, the destruction was still immense. Around 40,000 people died instantly, and another 40,000 succumbed to injuries and radiation effects in the following months. The once thriving city, known for its shipbuilding industry and bustling port, was now a wasteland, with corpses scattered in the rubble and survivors struggling for medical aid that did not exist. Eyewitnesses reported grotesque scenes of destruction, people with flesh hanging from their bodies, entire families burnt beyond recognition, and children wandering aimlessly, searching for parents who no longer existed. The devastation reached the Urakami Cathedral, one of the largest Christian churches in Asia, reducing it to ruins. Nagasaki, once a city of hope and industry, was now reduced to a shadow of its former self, its survivors left with the trauma of unimaginable horror. The aftermath, a world in shock. The twin bombings forced Japan's surrender on August 15, 1945, marking the official end of World War II. But victory came at an unfathomable price. Thousands of survivors battled radiation sickness, cancers, and lifelong disfigurement. Generations later, children of the Hibakusha suffered genetic mutations and health complications, a silent legacy passed down through the generations. The horror of Hiroshima and Nagasaki ignited a global debate about nuclear warfare. The world had witnessed the full potential of atomic destruction, sparking the Cold War's nuclear arms race, with countries racing to develop their own nuclear arsenals. This led to the eventual establishment of nuclear non-proliferation treaties, and the formation of international organizations such as the United Nations to prevent further use of such weapons. Scientists, historians, and politicians have continued to debate whether the bombings were necessary, with some arguing that Japan was already on the verge of surrender. The ethical dilemma of whether the bombings were justified remains a divisive issue to this day. A lesson for humanity. Hiroshima and Nagasaki were not just cities. They became symbols of the darkest capabilities of mankind. The bombing served as both a warning and a tragedy, reminding us that war, when waged with such weapons, has no true winners. Today, Hiroshima's Peace Memorial and Nagasaki's Atomic Bomb Museum stand as solemn, eternal reminders of that fateful August. The preserved remnants of buildings, twisted metal, and charred ruins are a haunting testament to the ferocity of the atomic blasts. The stories of the Hibakusha, the survivors, echo through these sites, their faces marked by both pain and resilience as they recount their experiences and the horrors they witnessed. Melted artifacts, personal belongings, and images of once thriving cities reduced to ashes stand as physical proof of the devastation that altered the course of history. These memorials, visited by millions each year, serve not only as reminders of the past, but also as shrines of peace. They urge visitors to reflect on the unimaginable cost of war, urging future generations to carry the message of peace forward. The exhibits, which include heartfelt survivor testimonies and poignant visual displays, strive to ensure that the lessons of Hiroshima and Nagasaki are never forgotten. Their message is clear. We must learn from this dark chapter in history and prevent the horrors of nuclear warfare from ever repeating. The question remains, however, as pressing as ever. Will humanity heed the lessons of its past, or are we doomed to repeat the devastating mistakes of history? As the shadow of nuclear weapons continues to loom over the modern world, the responsibility lies with each generation to ensure that peace prevails, and the horrors of atomic warfare remain a lesson learned, not a nightmare relived.